what seems to me the scale or the potential, because I have no idea, of course, what will happen in the future, but the potential of this moment strikes me as something that I need to be very modest about. But that's difficult, and it's been one of the most difficult things about the last year and a half, 2 years, the pandemic. In March, when the pandemic struck, it kind of exploded two major points that have been crucial throughout my entire life and career. One was, it was evident that humanity all around the world was having a great deal of difficulty understanding that our collective condition depends on collective choices, meaning that there are public goods or shared resources. For instance, the gratitude that I have that I'm speaking English at this gathering, which is my mother tongue, not a very fair thing, because it's just the dominance of English has nothing to do with fairness, has a lot to do with power. But of course, it enables us to communicate, and that's a wonderful, amazing thing. And there are so many aspects of the world around us that are constituted by these public goods or shared resources. And what the pandemic did in such a dramatic fashion, because it was so rapid and so evident, was that it showed us that our public goods, our shared resources, our interdependence was not evident to us, that we didn't understand how it functioned or why it functioned or how it could continue to function. And I won't go into the reasons for that, there are many, but it was to me a very powerful message and moment. And the other, which I think we all share here, is that what better demonstration could we have of the fact that the image of the future that people have in their minds, the way in which their imagination fabricates a description of imaginary futures, that those descriptions are absolutely central, profoundly powerful to our perception, to the way we see the world, what we pay attention to. And all of a sudden we were paying attention not to going to the office, just to take the banal example. All of a sudden, and this is a moment in the life of a futurist that I have become over the wandering years of my own explorations, a phenomenal sense of opportunity. But of course, that's also a burden. And in some senses, I think because of the pathology that I inherit, that's part of who I am, given when I was born and the world that I live in, the pathology that makes it exceedingly stressful in a way. And here I want to get at the nub of something that might seem deeply counterintuitive to most of us, but I don't think we have responsibility for a better future. And I think that, in fact, that's one of the really dangerous aspects of the world around us. And I want to just take us through that, because I think this notion that we have responsibility for a better future is to my mind one of the key sources of the toxicity that this species has demonstrated, not only with respect to each other, but with respect to the planet that we occupy together with so many other species and so much else. So, you know, thinking about this from the point of view of somebody who considers themselves part of a community, the future studies community, I'm very aware, as I'm sure all of you are, that we're in one of these periods of a cyclical upswing. Those of us who've been in the profession or the field for quite some time know that this comes and it goes. There are moments when everybody's interested in the future more or less. And at the moment, you know, you can surf the wave. but here, and those of you who have been following it know that the Secretary General of the United Nations has recently put futures thinking to the forefront, primarily articulated as what I would consider a planning perspective, which is, one understands why planning and those who are considered responsible for planning, those people who run the bureaucracies that are corporations, private firms, public entities, the bureaucratic imperative for building great walls, great pyramids, and other monuments, this long-standing power structure that has been pretty universal all around the world. That power structure realizes that there are inadequacies to their planning, and so they're a bit frightened. They're grasping, and they want to improve their planning. And of course, reform and improvement to existing systems is one of the cardinal aspects of a planning approach to the world, and so they're upping the demand. The pandemic has ripped away people's images of the future, and that's generated a huge demand. What am I going to do without an image of the future? If I don't have an image of the dinner I'm going to cook, I can't go and buy the ingredients. I need to have an image of the future in order to understand what to look at and what to do in the world around me. And of course, climate extinction offers us a message which says, either the ends, and this is one of the very dangerous, I think, aspects of the current conjuncture, that the ends, saving humanity from the horror of climate change, justifies the means. And we all know where that has taken us before as a species, saying that the ends justify the means. So I think that we're in a situation at the moment, and if I can frame it this way, I hope you'll follow my thinking, is that the future studies community, which the APFN is of course a very important component, does, I think, have a responsibility, and in that sense, I think it's a responsibility to share knowledge and to also point out that there is a public good on the table at the moment. There's a common resource, and that common resource, this won't surprise any of you, is what I think of as futures literacy. Futures literacy is a common resource for all of humanity. It's something that all of you have heard me say is accessible to everybody because everybody anticipates. But it's a way of significantly, and I would say in some senses, and this is a way to understand how difficult it is, it's that it's a paradigmatic break. It's a really a fundamental shift from this millennia-long alienation that we've created because we think we can impose our will on the future. And this alienation from a creative universe, from the evolutionary processes, this has been, I think, responsible in large part for the reproduction of the old power structures, for the reproduction of oppression, but particularly for this reproduction of this false sense of security, that by destroying uncertainty or controlling uncertainty, by imposing our will on the future, by creating the future as the best way to predict it, we are fulfilling some mission. And this I think, is something that we must absolutely find a way to break from, and to get beyond the glorification of our achievements in perpetuity, the imposition of our vaunted status on future generations by building statues, the ubiquitous quest, which seems, whether it's a nation state or a corporation or even individuals, for immortality, for the species, for ourselves. This approach towards legacy, which I think is ungenerous, and which does not show confidence or the kind of belief, let's say, in future generations, is a toxic form of legacy. And it disconnects us primarily from the perception of reality. And this is where I think we really need to break apart perception and the choices that we seem to be so urgently in a hurry to come to. It's a question to me here of how to reintegrate uncertainty, how to reconcile us as a species with the fundamental state of complexity, not more complex, less complex, faster, slower. We simply live in a creative universe, and the immense beauty of the human imagination is that it offers us a window, an access point to actually letting go of the past, not through disrespect or not through some idea that we can't learn from the past, but by saying we have the ability in our imagination to be creative as well, and that the creativity of our imagination allows us to name things that have no name, that allow us to appreciate difference in the sense that the world, the universe is composed of repetition and difference. And how do we become more able, more competent in identifying, making sense of this difference? And that's where improvisation comes in, is that the differences that emerge at every moment all around us, and the universe, the world around us, is generating experiments, good, bad, indifferent, failed, all the time. And these are not human experiments per se, they're just the incredible richness of the ephemeral now, the non, because we don't know, durable, the things that have no inherent evidence of continuity, but are nevertheless the sparks of the potential that then could turn into something completely unexpected, could turn into an unintended consequence, an intended consequence. But the ability to welcome that, to feel that music of the universe around us is the source of improvisation, I think is one of the key public good aspects of future studies, as the study of human anticipatory systems and processes. And that if we study those anticipatory systems and processes, which are very diverse, we're in a position to fundamentally enhance the capacity of the human imagination to sense and make sense of difference. And I want to really stress that futures literacy as a capability is not a method or a technique. It is a way of putting our finger on this ability to reframe the role of our imagination, not as just being able to imagine a better way of doing things or how to improve our version of improvement for future generations. You should do things the way I think you should do them. Many of us wouldn't treat our children that way because it would indicate a fundamental lack of confidence, and it would indicate a form of authority that I think most of us would not welcome. So this repositions our understanding of agency. It takes us away from the arrogance of I will make a difference, or my vanguardist policy will cure or solve the world's problems. And by enhancing this ability to sense and make sense of difference, to embrace complexity, I really see an incredible opportunity. But of course, I don't know what this capability-based approach to the future, as opposed to a goal-based approach, will produce. But by embracing what many of you have heard me call walking on two legs, a dual paradigm perspective, one of planning and one of improvisation. And obviously, improvisation requires preparation, but it's not the same. I mean, a score is a score, choreography is choreography, improvisation is not planning. It offers us an opportunity, I think, as the future studies community, to make an important contribution. Again, I don't know for good or bad, but it's a contribution that I think we have evidence we can make to move beyond, and I use a pejorative term, basically the colonial nature of futures thinking in the world around us today. And it's a dual colonial characteristic, because on the one hand, the powerful dominate, the technocratic, the forecasters, the predictors, the ideologues, the vanguardists, the I know better, follow me, the people who appeal to the naivete, and in some senses a justified one, because without the capability to read and write, of course we listen to the person who can read the book. Of course we go to see the scribe to write our letter. But if we're literate, we can write our own letters, and we can read our own books. And so in the context of a capability-based perspective and the proposition that the conditions of change are changing all the time, but there we potentially have a point of inflection to work with, a point of leverage by calling attention to something that we have learned in the context of all the things that are going on in the world around us today, that we can break from this colonial nature of futures thinking, where the powerful impose their images of the future on most people because they don't have the capability. They're not empowered to understand the origins and sources of their images of the future, and particularly to not understand the power for hope and for fear of those images of the future. And of course, the other colonization that it allows us to break from is this idea of imposing our will on the future. The idea of the genius or prescient, and in fact, we know it's the ex post storytelling about the winner that actually reinforces this proposition, because that's not the way it happened. But the wonderful story of the winner who seems to have been prescient, the hero in history, to move us away from that idea that somebody knows better about what future generations can and want to do, in that way imposing our will on the future, that we know better for future generations. Now, I say all this in a moment when there's obviously a sense of tremendous urgency in the face of climate extinction, in the face of the disintegration of public goods around the world, with the menace of our arrogance, making us fragile and brittle and vulnerable to things that are absolutely common and historically always present, like a virus. And so we face also, I think, this fear, and it's a speculative scenario projection, that, like I said at the outset, that the ends will justify the means, and that we will be subjected to a significant destruction of our capacity to be free, to use the Senian term. So I feel very privileged and very, very grateful to be able to make these observations. But I make these observations, and I'll close with this at the end of my time. I make these observations as an appeal to simply sharing our understanding of what I would call the discipline of anticipation, as something that embraces a diversity of ways of using the future and integrating our imagination into what we see first and then what we do. And this observation is meant as a way to, in some senses, change the conditions of change. So it is an instrumental. It is doing, in some senses, what I say we should not do, which is to think about a better future. But I want to point out that I believe that this better future that I'm talking about is not the better future of, is it good or bad, or does it work better or worse? It's simply saying it's better because we will understand and be at greater ease in the universe that we happen to live in, where we can turn uncertainty into the rich source for improvisation and novelty, taking advantage of novelty that I think is all around us, but that we have, in some senses, turned our backs on. And I don't know if that will mean a better future for our children, but I think it's the contribution and gift that I want to make without imposing any legacy, simply saying, this is how I have lived my life. This is how I have seen the world around me. This is what my experimentation and my dance has shown me. Thank you very much, everybody. And I'm really looking forward to continuing to work with all of you.